Saquon Barkley is set to become a free agent for the first time in his career. What will the top running back get paid in free agency, and what are the best fits?
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi again, everyone, and welcome into a Wednesday edition of Locked On NFL. I'm James Rapien, along with Chris Carter. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. We have a ton of franchise tag reaction, including Justin Madubuike. We will get to that coming up in just a bit. Dalton Schultz getting a deal, by the way. But let's start with Saquon Barkley. Today's show, by the way, is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150. If your bet wins, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And Chris, Saquon Barkley isn't tagged. He will be a free agent. He can sign with any of the 32 teams, which includes the Giants if he wants to return there. But he is out there, and he is the top running back in free agency in a really deep free agent pool and class of running backs, I would say. Where do you think his best landing spot is?
I would, if I'm him, I'm looking at teams that already have an established offense that could plug me in, that have good salary cap space so they could afford. And there's a few teams that really come to mind that I think could be really beneficial to him as far as, being a winner and something that could work out. Two teams in the AFC specifically. I'm gonna start with your Cincinnati Bengals, which I know they got Joe Mixon, but come on, Saquon Barkley, Joe Mixon. Like I think there's really good value you could have there if you put Barkley in an offense with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Joe Burrow. Like that's asking for fireworks. Like there's a lot of that, and I also think that the Bengals could do a lot with Barkley in the passing game. I think that they'd be able to work him in a lot of different ways. His athleticism would just be extremely explosive. And the Bengals, you still need to fix the offensive line, but I think there could be something there. The other team I'd be interested in looking at, the Houston Texans, Put him with C.J. Stroud. Give Stroud a dynamic running back behind him who can bring the veteran experience that Saquon has. And let's be real, Saquon, this is going to be his prime. He'll be 27 years old this year. So his next 3 years, this could be a really great time to have him. That's another team I'd be looking at. And then a last team here, and this one, I think I'm not sure if it would work financially. Considering the Madubuike tag, but the Baltimore Ravens, because the Ravens could use a talented running back. A lot of people were saying Derrick Henry before free agency was even starting to be talked about, just looking at the fact that Tennessee Titans were going to pay him. But could you imagine a backfield with Lamar Jackson and Saquon Barkley and having to worry about those guys side by side and the things that it would add? Those are just three teams off the top of my head that I look at their salary cap space, I look at their roster construction, I'm like, I'd be really intrigued to see Saquon go those places.
Yeah, I think there are three really good options. Houston, to me, you have the rookie quarterback contract. You can take advantage of it, right? You can splurge a little bit. So that's certainly one. I think it's interesting you mentioned the Bengals because they have the Joe Mixon decision. Obviously, I talk about them every day, all day on Locked On Bengals. And it's the idea of Saquon in stripes, I think, is really intriguing. And yet I don't even know if it's a real possibility. I don't know if internally they would consider it. I would, because I think he's a significant upgrade. But to me, look around the league. Where could he go? Where could he help right away? All right, well, the thing I like about the Texans comp is it's a rookie contract, rookie quarterback contract. Well, who else am I bullish on rookie quarterback-wise still on their rookie deals? Well, I like Anthony Richardson a lot, but he has Jonathan Taylor.
Right.
I look around and it's like, okay, well, Justin Herbert has his deal now. And some of these guys that are coming up, Lamar Jackson obviously has his extension. So that's where I think you can splurge. Like if you're, and I'll just throw it out there, and I need to look at Carolina's cap space. Do you need every weapon under the sun for Bryce Young? I think so. You need as many. Now, that is not a sexy destination. I don't know if he would love to go there, but it is interesting. The Tennessee Titans, they're moving on from Derrick Henry. They have a nice young back there. Could they add Saquon Barkley to that mix? Because they have the quarterback on the rookie deal. I think that one's interesting. Could Arizona do it? Would the Rams find a way to do it? Probably not with Kyron Williams. I'm just trying to spitball and find the right destination. But I do think that if I had to guess, I think Houston. They already re-signed Dalton Schultz.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're able to get a guy like Saquon Barkley. Where's the weakness now? Nico Collins emerged. You have a guy in Tank Dell who's really promising. Now you have your tight end. Now you have a running back weapon that is a true weapon.
Do they have 2 first-round picks?
I believe that's right. Yeah, because they have the Cleveland Browns first rounder. So they do.
There. Well, so right there, you could, and with this wide receiver heavy class, you can still get another talented player there, make defensive investments there. Texans, I just look at, and right now, this is not adjusted with the Dalton Schultz contract, but they had $70 million in cap space going into this. If I'm the Texans and after what I did last year, it just makes a lot of sense to go get a guy like Saquon.
They only have 1 first round. They have the Cleveland pick. They use the other one. That's right, to move up for Willie.
That's right. They traded. That's right. I'm doing it backwards. The Bears have 2 first round picks for this year. The Texans were involved in that trade, but still, first round pick. You're 20. I think 23rd overall. I want to say is around their range. You could still get a really talented receiver if you wanted to go there and give CJ Stroud a top talent. Or get a defensive guy. There's a lot of great things you could do this year, but adding Saquon Barkley and then doing that, I think it makes a lot of sense for where the Texans are.
There are a lot of other franchise taggees, players that are getting franchise tagged, some that aren't. Antoine Winfield, Justin Madubuike, a bunch of others. Let's dive into them, Chris, because there's a lot of meat on the bone there, including what it could mean for a former number 1 overall pick quarterback that is set to become a free agent for the second time in his career, but first time when he's actually been desirable, Baker Mayfield. We'll get into all of that coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. So maybe you throw $5 on LeBron James and the Lakers and you think that they're going to win on the money line, or you want to live bet a certain NBA game or college game, or you're looking ahead to the NFL draft. Well, you can get in on all the action with FanDuel. Exclusive props, same game parlays, so much more in one spot. FanDuel.com/lockedon is where you go to get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
We're back here on the Locked On NFL podcast. It's the Wednesday edition with Chris Carter and James Rapien. James, let's look at the franchise tag and as a whole, and we'll start with the one that's fresh. Madubuike gets the defensive tackle gets tagged by the Ravens. He's returning back there. That's a big move by the Ravens, by the way, to get a key piece to their defense from this past season. A lot of people, including myself, were wondering who they would try to keep because both him and Patrick Queen were set to hit free agency. So with him being back, I think that adds to the conversation, an all-pro type of player. But now you have, at least at the time of us recording this, more things can happen afterwards. We're recording this like Tuesday early afternoon. But you have other players who've been tagged: Brian Burns, the edge rusher from the Panthers, T. Higgins, the wide receiver from the Bengals, and L'Jarius Sneed, the cornerback from the Chiefs. So now that's 4 players with the franchise tags on them. Between those 4, who do we think brings the most value as far as, what they bring to their team, if they could stick around long enough? And these are teams that are obviously competing for what they're doing. Also, and I think that's the conversation is also looking at the teams where they are. The Chiefs and the Bengals certainly right there. Ravens too. The Panthers are in a peculiar situation because they are in the middle of a complete rebuild. But those 3 other teams, they're Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah, I think. I look at this. Madubuike, to me, still hasn't reached his ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think of dominant defensive linemen, and Chris Jones is going to get a lot of love. We'll talk about Christian Wilkins coming up. But he was someone, when I was doing my research, if he becomes a free agent, I was like, oh, well, the Bengals should go after him. And I think he would have been, because of age, mid-20s, sack production on the interior, and doing it in the AFC North, which is it is the best division in the NFL, but let's just say you disagree with that. It's certainly the most physical division. So doing it there, he's such a commodity that I think the Baltimore Ravens, they had no choice but to tag him. And to me, he would have been the best defensive tackle on the market, not named Chris Jones. So ahead of Christian Wilkins, Chris Jones is obviously an alien, and I'm not going to compare anyone to him. But I think Madubuike has another level. And so he's the one that stands out and stands out, even though I really like Antoine Winfield Jr. I think T. Higgins is awesome. I think some of these guys that are getting tagged should be tagged. In fact, if I'm the Dolphins, I would not let Christian Wilkins become a free agent, even though he's going to. But Madubuike, just a no-brainer for the Ravens, and I'm not shocked that they're not letting him at free agency. What about you? Which one stands out the most?
Madubuike changes a lot of things. We planned this well in advance, and then all of a sudden Madubuike happens like right before we started the show. I was coming in thinking about Higgins and what he does for the Bengals, because you have him as right now as a number 2 for the Bengals with Jamar Chase, and that's just ridiculous. He goes anywhere else, he's most likely number 1, like unless there's another Jamar Chase type of player on that team. And keeping him with Chase this year, assuming that there's no tag and trade scenario that the Bengals are working on right now, it keeps that offense as extremely dangerous. Not that it wouldn't be dangerous without him, but you get 2 basically number 1 wide receivers that teams have to be aware of at all times when they're playing. Gives Joe Burrow his options while the Bengals are still trying to reform the offensive line. That to me is still, I think, one of the more important, maybe even the most important one. L'Jarius Sneed is a great corner. He's doing a great job, but I also feel like he can be moved around. Like if the Chiefs won't break because he's not there next year, they'll hurt. They'll be missing the guy because he was very important to their defense and made several big plays and was extremely reliable all year. And I think the Steelers are one of those teams that like they're checking in to see it's going to take to get a L'Jarius Sneed. But I look at what Higgins brings to the table, and I lean towards him. I hadn't even thought about Madubuike being tagged going into this, and it's just, man, that's a very interesting situation for him to be there. He's 27 years old, and what he does for that Ravens defense up front, he's going to create space. He creates opportunities for everyone around him. Man, it's just an interesting situation. And it makes me wonder what's the Ravens' new plan, because going into this year, I think they you're thinking, okay, well, the Ravens, they're gonna have more cap space now with that payment. They might have to make some other moves here to kind of free space up or figure out what their plan is moving forward. Because they already let go Patrick Queen. He's going to free agency. I just wonder what else is coming down the line for them.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, I agree with you on Higgins. He makes them so dynamic, Bengals wise. But Madubuike is it Wike? Madubuike?
I think it's Buike.
Okay, Madubuike. That sounds more realistic than.
We're sorry if we're butchering it. If it's something completely different.
By the way, we should know your name because you are that big of a problem, man.
We cover him 2 times a year.
You are a problem, yeah, and he is a problem, right? And I think that's why Baltimore is Baltimore, because Patrick Queen came along, and in an ideal world, would they have used the 5th-year option on him? Probably, but he didn't play up to that standard. And then the light kicked on. And part of that is landing Roquan Smith and the role and all of those things. But keeping Madubuike is way more important. It's way more important than signing a Saquon Barkley, even though Barkley and Lamar, to your point, it would be a lot of fun. But Madubuike is the one that's going to be making Joe Burrow have to get rid of it much faster, right? And make these guys in the AFC North and in the AFC feel him. So I like this move a lot. I do think, though, they need more on offense. And it's just something that they've consistently had this issue. And how do they get that? I'm not sure now, but maybe they can reshuffle the deck a little bit. I do think losing Patrick Queen is a loss, but it's something you have to take when you draft well. And they obviously draft really well. I will say this, the Antoine Winfield Jr. part of it.
That was what I was going next. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's awesome. And they're working on a long-term deal still, according to reports. And maybe they get that done by the time you hear this. But the other element of this, do you think Baker's going to end up in Tampa? Do you think he's for sure going to be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer? Because
I don't
he's
know.
definitely scheduled now for free agency.
Right.
And it just feels kind of weird. They did bring back Mike Evans, by the way. 2 years, $41 million. The reporting on that was kind of weird. But 2 years, $41 million. So they have the pieces around Baker. Do you think they bring back Baker?
It's tough because like you got to ask what can Baker make on the open market? Because if I'm Baker Mayfield, this is my chance to be free to go and see who's willing to pay some ridiculous contract. Because how many times have we seen ridiculous open market contracts to quarterbacks? It's just, you think back to Kirk Cousins and what he made in just his first contract with the Vikings. Like that's where Baker needs to be salivating and like, oh, I got opportunities here after what everyone saw me do for Tampa Bay. Now, granted, you bring him back to Tampa Bay and with Mike Evans back, that's enticing because then you can keep you could take a decent contract, maybe not like the biggest contract in the NFL or all the guaranteed money like Kirk Cousins got, but you still have dynamic receivers, you still have a team that you could work with that was just in the playoffs. I'm not entirely sure if I'm the Buccaneers too. Like, is there a better option out there? Do I make sure, however, that I get this done no matter what? That's going to be interesting to see because now you're paying Mike Evans, you're tagging Antoine Winfield. Like, I need to see the updated cap numbers as far as how all of that impacts their cap space and what they'd have to do to keep Baker, as well as fill the other spots in their roster that they naturally need to do.
Yeah, it's a balancing act. And if I'm Baker Mayfield, I would be. You look at New England. It's intriguing. It's an intriguing landing spot because they have some ammo and they could say, "Hey, we're going to get you some receivers in this draft. We're going to trade down potentially. We're going to be able to get you even with a trade down Malik Neighbors or Roma Dunze or heck Marvin Harrison Jr. if they stayed pat at 3. Like, whew, I don't know. But it's another dynamic that's there. And by the way, what about the Falcons? Do the Falcons have to go after Kirk Cousins? Everyone just pencils that in. What if they rob the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? They say, we are robbing you. We're going to snatch your chain, your Baker Mayfield chain, and we're going to put it around our neck, and we're going to have him throw to Kyle Pitts. By the way, I think Kyle Pitts would be unlocked with Baker Mayfield. I think he would know how to throw in the ball. Don't you?
I think he would certainly know how, and I'd be interested to see guys like Drake London. How would that offense work? Baker Mayfield would be a very interesting fit there. I keep seeing a lot of the Justin Fields to Falcons talk. I think that's interesting as well. Wherever Baker goes, like here's the thing: Baker can choose what he wants, right? Like he can go for money. He can go for money and talent around him. The Falcons, I think, are in an interesting position because they have, at least to what I've looked up recently, they're right around the same sort of cap space situation as the Buccaneers. Well, they were before Evans and Winfield, I believe, but still, the Falcons have the cap space to sign Baker to a really good deal, 20 plus, 25 plus mil a year. And then they have young weapons around him. Wherever I'm going, Baker, my point is I want receivers. I want weapons that can make plays. And I want to be somewhere where I can show like, hey, I can still be that guy for, moving forward because, you look at Baker Mayfield, I talked about Saquon Barkley's prime. This is a guy who's 28 years old. He'll be 29 when the season starts next year. That's prime time to prove yourself as a quarterback. Because say he signs a 3-year deal for, I don't know, for $25-30 million a year this year, and wherever he goes, he lights it up with Evans and Godwin or Pitts and Bijan Robinson and Drake London. Say he lights it up in one of those places. In 3 years, he's then gonna be a 32-year-old quarterback with all that experience and probably better numbers. And then he'll be able to command even more money. So Baker's in a prime position, and kudos to him because a lot of people left him dead and buried when the Browns basically forsake him, and then he went off and with the Panthers and then with the Rams, and now he's back at a prime position to put himself as one of the more higher paid quarterbacks in the league.
I have a question for you,
What's
and
up?
It involves quarterbacks, and I will get to it coming up next.
But first, I want to remind you this show's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, that's what drives or brings home the winning trophy, and is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
All right, Chris, would you rather pay Baker Mayfield, let's say 3 years, $32 million per, because I think it will be in the 30s, or trade a second-round pick for Justin Fields if you are the Atlanta Falcons or the New England Patriots, because both have top 10 picks?
So here's the thing with the Justin Fields situation. If you're trading a second for him, you're also basically signing yourself up for his fifth-year option because he's on the last year of his rookie deal. And if you don't give him the fifth-year option now, that makes him a free agent the next year. And then say he lights it up with you, like you found the answer. Guess what? He can tell you, well, guess what? I'm going to make $50 million on the market or whatever. So you kind of have to give him his fifth-year extension right away. Trust me, I've thought about this a lot because everyone wants to know, are the Steelers trading for Justin Fields? Are the Steelers trading for Justin Fields? I have to deal with this every day in Pittsburgh. I got 3 more questions today on my hotline about it. But if I'm a team and I have those options, signing Baker and I have the money to sign Baker or trading a second for Justin Fields, I might do a fourth for Justin Fields simply because of the contract situation. Because you just don't know. And here's the other thing is that if you commit that signing or that fifth-year extension money and then he's terrible, now you've messed up another year of salary cap situation. You've bet wrong. And sure, you can reset after 2 years, but Baker Mayfield, a veteran, doing well, trending in the right direction, I think I'd take that. I think I'd just sign him, not keep my draft capital and keep building in that direction right now. I really think that what might be about to happen, and the Bears, their front office just keeps getting worked over year after year. The Chase Claypool trade was just bad. They could be in a situation where everyone knows, like, look, we see that contract situation. We know you're going to take Caleb Williams, so we're just not going to pay you all that for Justin Fields, especially when he's got 30 interceptions in 3 years and 38 fumbles in 3 years. I think people are going to be like, you know what? We'll let you drive that price down. Because at first I heard it was, it's a first for Justin Fields. Now it's a second. Bet you next week's the third. And then come draft day, if he's still on that roster, who's coughing up a big draft pick for him? I think if I'm a team, I wait out the Bears and see how, if I can get them to a day 3 pick, then I'll trade for Justin Fields. But a second, nah, man, not in this class where I can get a top flight corner, a really good offensive tackle, or a receiver with that kind of a pick and sign the Baker Mayfield. I'll take that option.
Why wouldn't these teams that are considering these outside of Tampa, because I get it, Baker played well there.
Yeah.
But if you're considering trading for Justin Fields, why wouldn't you just call Russell Wilson and give him $1 million?
It's a good question. It's a very good question.
He's free. He's willing to play for league minimum, wants a chance to start. Russell Wilson to the Steelers? Is that what you're saying to me?
Here we go. It's funny. That question was asked to Omar Khan, Steelers GM, and there was like a collective laughter. And he didn't dismiss it. The laughter wasn't from him. It was more so because the Steelers have been bombarded with questions about quarterbacks and all their decisions. But like Russell Wilson would make the only thing about Russell Wilson I'd be concerned about if I'm the Steelers is I'm trying to rebuild. I'm trying to keep up the locker room because I think they have their leaders, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt. There's guys who are at the forefront of that team that are trying to set the tone for the next generation. The guys like Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth and George Pickens, guys that they want to, Broderick Jones, guys they want to evolve into leaders. And if you bring in Russell Wilson, what does that do to that dynamic? Not to say that Russell Wilson's a cancer, but things didn't go great in Denver, and there were obvious divisions within that locker room. And maybe those divisions weren't all on Russ, but maybe they were. And we also know just past, based off of what we've heard from guys like Marshawn Lynch and Richard Sherman, similar things are going on in Seattle. That would be my one hang up about Russ, is that like if I haven't established everything's cool, we just need a quarterback just to hold on to the ball and just shut up. Don't say Steelers country, let's ride. Sure, all's well there, but I think Russ has to know that at this point. Then I would consider it. But if I'm a team that's like building up a young culture, if I have a lot of young guys, especially on the offensive side of the ball, the way the Steelers do, and I'm trying to rebuild that side, I'd be a little cautious of that simply because of what we've learned about the inner workings of teams that have had Russell Wilson and what they've kind of gone through. Talent-wise, makes a lot of sense. Chemistry-wise is the only questions that I'd have.
Because of the value.
Yeah.
It's so cheap. And
Again,
he's
super
got
cheap.
He's got to build up that reputation. I think it's interesting. I think Baker, if I'm the Falcons, I would try. I think there are multiple teams that'll be in on him. Ultimately, if I had to guess, I say he goes back to Tampa. We'll see on that. I also think if Russell Wilson is still out there and it's just a backup this year, that the Miami Dolphins should be the team that goes after him. I was just trying to think of like, all right, who just perfect backup for Tua. You just slide him in. The offense probably doesn't change much. Plenty of weapons. Speaking of the Dolphins, Christian Wilkins is he's going to get $100+ million. What do you think he breaks the back? I think he's going to get like $110 million over 4 years and like $70 million guaranteed. I think he's going to get a huge deal from someone.
I think so too. He's too dynamic of a player. And we've also seen like there's certain things that have changed in the NFL. Like running back used to be the prime position. It's not as much anymore. Linebacker used to be the prime position. It's not as much anymore. Interior defensive line ain't gone nowhere. It's still like, if you can get a top tier guy, that's still something that that'll turn a lot of heads and it will move teams to make space in their salary cap to get a guy like that you can build everything around. I think he's certainly going to get that kind of money. Chris Jones is the guy that everyone's waiting to see. Will the Chiefs keep him? Will he get paid? What will he get paid? But and Madubuike being tagged is kind of adds something to that. But yeah, I could totally see $100 million easy for Christian Wilkins, and he deserves it. Like he's 28 years old. That's also the prime for defensive linemen. Like a lot of people think of when they're younger they're better. Well, typically in the NFL, and just my time studying the NFL and just looking at players, I find a lot of defensive linemen, they kind of adjust their bodies in the early part of their career because they want to figure out, do I want to put on more weight? Do I want to get lighter? Am I better when I'm quicker? Am I better when I'm just harder to move? Like, guys have to figure that out. And then once they figure that out, then they have to kind of just keep playing with that and get better at it. And then by the time they're in their late 20s, that's where you find a lot of defensive linemen who just start to really cook in their career and just become absolute monsters. And that's where Christian Wilkins is at. So if I'm Christian Wilkins, I'm looking for the bank. I'm looking for that all. And if I'm a team out there and I need an interior defensive line piece who's going to be long term, and I'm going to build my defense around, and I can't get Chris Jones, and now you can't get Madubuike, I'm absolutely taking Christian Wilkins.
The Browns were mentioned.
Heyo.
Pairing him with Myles Garrett. The Browns were mentioned at the combine. I think
that would be
Jeremy Fowler was the one that had it. Yeah,
that would be a move right there.
That would be something. And it's something that we're covering each and every day here on Locked On NFL, 5 times a week. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, follow wherever you get your podcast. Free agency about to start, and man, that just means things take flight with us. So for Chris Carter, I'm James Rapien. Thank you so much for listening to Locked On NFL.